I thought I'd talk with you this morning about truth. You've just heard some. One of the other truths is that we're ahead of schedule. Chuck, you don't need to worry that I'm going to take undue advantage of that. I was born and lived the first 18 years of my life in Warrenton, North Carolina, which is the county seat of Warren County, where Kathy now lives and serves young students. We didn't compare notes on our discussions, but we have a lot in common. It was a wonderful place to grow up. It was better even than Mayberry. A statue of a Confederate soldier looked out over the courthouse square, and there were two sets of water fountains underneath the soldier, one marked white and the other marked colored. John Graham High School that I went to was for white students only, and all the cafes in town were the same except for one hot dog stand where black people could go in through the back door. It all seemed perfectly normal to me. My father had known men who fought in the Civil War. His heroes, and mine too, I guess, were Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. In high school, we dutifully memorized that historical document that begins with "when in the course of human events" and includes the fabulous notion that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I didn't see anything incongruous about those truths until I got to Chapel Hill. When I got here, certain other truths became obvious. Those promises were for white men. They were written by slaveholders to refer to themselves. They were not for people of color and not for women. And no matter how successful that revolution was, those principles remained untrue for millions of people in this country. The history in this country since the Declaration is a 2-century struggle to make those truths apply to all of us. And it is the power of those truths that legitimizes and gives force to the drive to make them real. It included a brutal war to end slavery where thousands of Americans died. And after that, a long struggle against the denial of those truths by laws and violence and plain old hatred. There is no other way to read this history. It's a truth that we must acknowledge. It's a truth that we must see through the eyes of a black student who walks every day past the statue of a soldier who fought to keep his people in slavery. It's bothered me all my adult life. Why were I and my forebears so willing to tolerate and support it? But I recently picked up a wonderful little book written by Roger Wilkins, who was the head of the NAACP for many years. It's called Jefferson's Pillow. Thomas Jefferson's first recollections are being carried around on a pillow by a slave. Wilkins looks at the founding of our country and the writing of those words through the eyes of the men who wrote them. George Mason, George Washington, James Madison, and Thomas Jefferson, all slaveholders. And he reminds us that these men believed in these truths so strongly that they were willing to die for them. And he marvels at the vision and the courage of these men while not forgiving them for the hypocrisy. He permits us to see them in a much more forgiving light than he and we might if we simply view them as perpetuators of their status quo. And what he says after reviewing the history is that the ideals of these founding fathers are the moral authority of the first abolitionists and of the civil rights movement. And he points out all of these men were against slavery. Jefferson famously said so. They were slaveholders, but they were against slavery. Jefferson said, "I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever." It's only because the leaders of the civil rights movement could say to us, "You can't really mean that these promises don't apply to us." We have no response to that. These words are the basis for our common union. That is a truth. It's like many others, it is unpleasant sometimes. It's as unpleasant as the truth that we're causing our planet to overheat. But truth is what academic institutions like this one stand for. That's why we are here, and that's why we celebrate this place. This university has played a dramatic role in revealing to the citizens of this state, this nation, and the world the truths of history and science. Truths that are taught, discussed, and argued about in the buildings all around us. Today, truth is one of the only things that we have to hold on to. In the face of alternative facts, fake news, deep state conspiracies, we have to insist on truth. That's what the University of North Carolina stands for, and that is why we are so grateful to be alumni of this place, and so grateful to the Morehead-Cain Foundation for its contribution to the university in pursuing that mission. Thank you.